Oh, there we go. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the F6 Football Podcast. I'm Alex, and got my co-host here, Cam, and we
What's
are
up?
really excited to kick this podcast off. So hopefully you guys are watching us live. We're live on YouTube right now. So we're gonna have our first full episode here tonight. Once this is done, we're going to actually post this. This will be available in audio format on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and all the fun platforms. So wherever you get your podcasts at. But tonight it's going to be live. So if you joined us, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to kick this thing off because football is it's right around the corner, baby. It's coming right up on us. So with that, this will be our first episode. So just as an overview, we're going to talk a little bit about ourselves, kind of what we plan on doing with this podcast, and then we'll jump right into our season preview for the AFC. We're going to go through each division. We're going to talk about some players from each team, and then we'll give some predictions. So hold our own feet to the fire a little bit as we kick it off, and then of course we'll do the NFC later on this week. So with that, my name's Alex Rogland. I grew up in northern Missouri, small town in northern Missouri. So of course I got my Chiefs shirt on, one of my Super Bowl shirts here. So one of the things Cam and I we'll be honest about where we may or may not be biased, right? So I am a Chiefs fan. Grew up we were going to Arrowhead as a kid with my dad and my family. Loved watching Priest Holmes as a kid. He was my favorite, and Tony G and all those guys. And I kind of didn't follow the team quite as close enough during the 2010s, and I think part of that was obviously the Chiefs went through a lot of rough years there, and really just not a fun watch. So things turned around a little bit when Andy Reid kind of took over, and that I think brought me back, I think, to a much more closer follower of the team, and obviously since 2018 it's been smooth sailing, nothing but a lot of enjoyment. So that's a quick overview of myself. So I will be biased as a Chiefs fan, so you got to have to deal with that. But I'm really excited that to be joined and do this podcast with my brother-in-law. So I will say that as well, my brother-in-law Cam. So Cam, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your football fandom?
Yeah, hey guys, I am so excited to get started on this. I've been wanting to do something like this for quite some time, because one of my aspirations growing up was to get into sports analytics, which I have done. And at the time, I'm not currently working in sports after working in it for several years. So getting back into the scheme of football, talking about football, just doing what we love, I'm really excited to get into this. So yeah, I'm DC. Born and raised Commanders fan here, so I will be biased as well. Alex talked about the Chiefs going through a rough patch. I feel you, brother. Gone through one. I was born in the 90s, so it's been one big rough patch for us. But we're here now, and really looking forward to just talking some football, right?
Absolutely.
We're just fans right now, right? We're fans. We're talking to fans. Just football, man.
Absolutely. Well said, Cam. Well said. All right. Well, with that, just another quick overview. Just I forgot to mention earlier, we are going to bring you episodes every week, maybe more than one time a week. It'll kind of depend on Cam and I's schedules, and kind of everything as the season kicks off. But like I said, as we get closer to the season, we plan on focusing on a variety of different things. So we're going to bring you something different each week. Cam has a lot of awesome analytics and stuff to bring us and talk about that. So we might talk fantasy, we might talk draft, we're going to look ahead at some of the matchups later on this year. We'll talk scheme, we'll talk coaches, we'll talk players. We're happy to talk about it all. And we might even have some opportunities to bring on some fans from different teams and to get your hot takes and give you feedback on that right away. So, so that's awesome. So with that, I think let's jump into the first division that we're going to be talking about tonight, which is actually going to be the AFC East. And so with that, I think we're going to go through each team here. And Cam, I think you have some players to talk about. I have some players to talk about. So why don't you go ahead and kick us off and maybe talk about why you picked these specific players, and then go ahead and take us through your analysis and whatever you'd like to share about these teams in the AFC East.
Yeah, man. So what I want to do with this is go through and talk about players. Some players very well known, some lesser known players, known more just by the fan bases and players were excited to watch this season, right? It's not, we're talking about the AFC East first. It's not just going to be talking about Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen the whole time. We're really getting in there, and I mean, we'll talk about them for sure. But seeing some guys who may take a step forward, may take a step back, and just what we think about the teams as a whole. So with that said, we can jump into the AFC East, starting with Buffalo. They won the division last year. This year, their biggest win total is 10.5. They're favorites to win the division again at plus 130, but they have one of the hardest strengths of schedule, 29th this year, when forecasting Vegas projected win total. So I'm just gonna hop in with my player, and right now I'm looking at Ed Oliver and just an overall defensive line rotation. And Ed Oliver, for those of you who don't know, he's an interior defensive lineman. He just got a pretty big contract, 4 years, $68 million. It's not really breaking the bank for the team though. It's the 15th in the league currently at the annual average value for interior defensive linemen, and the structure is pretty team friendly. They can get out of it 2025 and on. It's pretty backloaded with low guaranteed money, higher salary. So it's not that egregious as it sounds at first with his production. And why I want to really watch him is because, he was the 9th overall pick, and he was drafted ahead of Dexter Lawrence, ahead of Jeffrey Simmons several years ago. And at the time, that it was a toss-up. It was personal opinion on which prospect you like more. And so far, he hasn't really held up his end of the deal for being a top 10 pick, but he's shown so many flashes on his tape throughout the last few years. I really think he can take a step forward. So my eyes are on him to see if he actually does. How about you, Alex? What do you think?
Yeah, and if I remember with Ed Oliver, he's out of Houston, right? And I think some of his comps were Aaron Donald, which, I mean, that is some pretty high. Talk about a high comp right off the bat.
Well, when you weigh 280 to 290, your comp's always Aaron Donald.
Yeah, well, good point. Good point. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's a good player. I think a player, and my angle on these players I was thinking about as a fan, what are some players that I want to see what they do, or just I'm curious in. So mine would be Gabriel Davis for the Bills. And as a Chiefs fan, I mean, I remember that game in the playoffs 2 years ago when I think he had maybe 200. It seemed like it was like 200 yards receiving. I mean, just was uncoverable. And then I know last year I think he dealt with maybe some injury and I maybe wasn't, or if I recall, he didn't quite live up to expectations. And so I know for the Bills, it seems like they really are. It seems like it might be a make or break year for him, that he really needs to show that he, I maybe put more consistency together. It seems like the high level athleticism is there, and he's had those kind of peak production points at times. But I'm curious to see, what that offense looks like. And if they can get him to, consistently perform week in and week out, I mean, that just adds to an already potent offense. So I think Gabriel Davis is a guy I'll keep my eye on this year.
Well, I do love Gabe Davis, and not as much as I like the opportunity more than the player. And we said the same thing last year, right? It's Stephon Diggs, it's Gabe Davis, and then who is it? It's Khalil Shakir, right? They love him as a slot guy. He's not an outside big play threat. He's going to stay in the slot. So if Gabe Davis doesn't come through on the outside, then the team's just not going to perform as well. So from a fantasy perspective, from a fan perspective, and just from seeing how the offense moves, Gabe Davis is, eyes are on him as well.
Cam, do you think the Bills, I know they drafted Kincaid in the first round. Do you think that we'll see some 2 tight end sets out of them? I know they've been, Dawson Knox, I know, is still there. Do you think that's something you could see their offense employing more?
Yeah. Now they just paid Dawson Knox, if I recall correctly, either this year or last year. I think last year. And decent contract. So the thing is, Dawson Knox, he's a pretty reliable receiver, and Kincaid is he's not exclusively a receiver. People tag him as such, but if you really watch his tape, he's a good lead gap tight end. You can pull him across, be a lead blocker on outside run plays and whatnot. So he still does have that, and I think they'll use that. But in terms of his, the reason he's a first round pick, he's a receiver. Going back to what we were talking about, Gabe Davis, right? We're going to see Dawson Knox on the inside, Kincaid on the inside. Shakir on the inside. I keep bringing up Shakir. He hasn't proven anything yet. I've heard good things out of camp. But Gabe Davis, you're just looking to him to shine on the outside and see if he can replicate some of that playoff success 2 years ago.
Absolutely. All right. Who you got for the Dolphins? I think is the next team we're going to talk about.
All right, Dolphins. So just quick overview: 9.5 projected win total this year. Their odds on division are plus 290, which are actually third. They're behind the Jets and Bills. So the Dolphins, now something you'll notice, I'll bring up a decent number of rookies just because I think they're overall exciting, right? We haven't ever seen them on a football field. And for the Dolphins, it's Devon Achane. He is electric, and I want to see his utilization because right now in the depth chart, it's for wide receiver, right? It's Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and I'm by no means calling Achane a wide receiver, but he has world-class speed. And if one of those receivers goes down, they're going to have to use him more in the screen game, more as just setting him out as a dump off option if the alpha isn't available, right? Because their third is Cedric Wilson. So I'm looking forward to seeing his utilization, see if they use him between the tackles or if he's just used as sort of a gadget specialist in his rookie year. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson both have a long history of injury, very long because they're both old for the position. and yeah, I'm just looking for, there are very polarizing views on Achane right now. He's too small. He'll only be used on, he'll get one screen a game and 3 carries is what a lot of people are projecting for him. And I see his utilization being a little higher than that because people don't take into account injuries going into the season, right? They look at the roster as a whole. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what he can bring to the table the first year. And honestly, I wanted to shout out Cam Smith as well, another rookie. I liked his tape a decent amount. He was drafted in the second round, and I think he can step right into what they're doing in Miami and play pretty well off the bat. He has inside-outside versatility, and he's just a solid prospect. Miami forfeited their first-round pick, so to take him with one of their first picks is if not their first. I don't recall who was drafted first between Achane and Smith. They were both seconds, I believe, but yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing what they can bring to the table year one.
Yeah, and I think with McDaniels too. I mean, it'd be exciting to see what he does. I mean, with that Shanahan-based run offense.
Let me correct myself. Achane was the third-round pick. I apologize. Nice. Yeah, pick 84.
All good. Yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think that for my player is more of a personal guy, but I got to watch Tyreek Hill again. I mean, he's electric. I know that's kind of an easy choice, but the other thing too is a Chiefs fan, and one of the things that for those of you that are following with Cam and I, we're fans, so we're just going to call it like it is. And there seems like Tyreek Hill's he seems to be pretty salty at the Chiefs, which I'm not entirely understand why. Because especially with some of the issues he had in college, the Chiefs got him. They got him as a steal in the draft. I believe he was a 4th round pick, third or fourth, maybe even 5th. I mean, he was a lot lower than I think what athleticism wise and obviously speed wise people thought about him. And I mean, Andy Reid gave Tyreek so many opportunities. He started as a punt returner, and then eventually, of course, worked his way in as a receiver. And I mean, the guy's electric, no doubt about it. But it was just odd the whole way that thing ended last year. And, he wanted, I think, $30 million. And with the Chiefs being tied up, knowing that Mahomes, what Mahomes' cap hit was going to be. And then, of course, knowing what was coming, with Chris Jones, which that hasn't been resolved yet. But, they just decided that they couldn't tie up that amount of money. And obviously Hill backed it up with, I think, an all pro season last year, certainly was electric. So, I'm curious to see how he'll back it up again. I think he had a comment last week where he said if he goes in the Hall of Fame, he only wants to go in as a Dolphin, which, once again, I don't know what would make him say things like that, but who knows? But either way, he chatters a lot off the field, but I know he can back it up. So, and then the fact that he's going to get to play the Chiefs this year, that game's actually in Germany, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, I'm excited to see Tyreek Hill again. I want to see if he can put together another performance like he did last year. And really excited to see him when the Chiefs and the Dolphins play. That's going to be something.
Oh yeah, and he was a 5th round pick also.
Oh,
so
5th round. Thank
even
you.
more
I
impressive.
knew it was late. Yeah, I knew it was
Yeah.
late because of the domestic, issues that he had or whatever. But yeah, I mean, he was a steal. But a lot of teams, it takes the right coach and staff to kind of unlock those talents, and Andy Reid knew what to do with them.
Yeah, and he is still having off-field issues. I mean, just as of a month ago. So
yeah, he is. That's true. You never
love
know.
him as an on-field player, but hopefully he can stay on the field throughout the rest of his career.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, what do you got? What do you got for an overview for us for the New England Patriots?
All right, Patriots. They have the lowest projected win total for the division at 7.5. Their odds on division are at 750, which honestly seems a bit low. I'd expect that to be closer to 1,000 or so with the division as it is, because they also have the most difficult projected strength of schedule in the entire NFL this upcoming season. So hard road ahead. But who I'm looking at is Tyquan Thornton and the wide receiver room, because their wide receiver room's so weird, man. Thornton people thought he was overdrafted in the 2nd round, and he just needs to emerge as a reliable target for this offense to operate. Right, Juju is historically more productive from the slot. He'll probably assume the Jacoby Myers role, right? And then Devontae Parker, he signed an extension, 3 year, $33 million, which is the same amount per year as Saquon's making, which is always entertaining.
Yeah, that
to
contract
see.
And that contract number was passed around. If I recall, I think that's what like Juju got, and I want to say like Alan Lazard, like all of them almost got like an identical contract of like 3 years for 33. So that was the number for wide receivers this offseason.
Yeah, 3 for 33. And Devontae Parker, I don't know if you've seen this stat, this going around Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, but Next Gen Stats tracks separation, and here are Devontae Parker's finishes among qualifying receivers over the last 3 years. This last year, he was 122nd out of 122, which is dead last.
Ouch.
2021, 127th out of 127. And then the year before, 132nd out of 132. He's dead last in separation every year. Now, that's not his game, right? Yeah. He's a go up and fight you and take the ball out of your hands kind of guy. But that's not the kind of number I want to be paying. The kind of guy I want to pay $33 million to. Yep. So with, he'll be on the outside. Juju will be on the inside. And where's Thornton come in, right? The receiving room is not very deep, right? Keyshawn Butte is a 5th round pick. He was supposed to be.
That's an awesome name.
It is. I've heard it pronounced multiple ways. I elect to keep saying it like that. He was a projected 1st round pick going into last season based on the first half of his 2021 campaign, and he looked great. And then last year, I mean, if you watch him, he didn't look like a wide receiver. I mean, he couldn't break, he couldn't separate. He looked sluggish, and he dropped. What was it, to the 6th round? And I've heard good things out of camp, but either way, this wide receiver room is not deep, and it doesn't really have stars. So if their 2nd round pick from last year, Thornton, can't step up, it's going to be a long year for Mac Jones.
Well, that's funny that you picked out wide receiver room, because I had the same thought about the passing game, only I put Mac Jones, right? I think that it's been I don't even know if you say hit or miss, but I mean, the expectations, I feel like Mac Jones was kind of all over the place, even going back to the draft. There were some folks that said he's going to be a bust, and other folks thought that when the Niners moved up, the Niners are going to try to grab him at number 2, or 3. Thank you. 3. So, he's been a little all over the place. And then last year, there were Patriot fans calling for Bailey Zappi, instead of Mac Jones. So, I mean, but then again, like having defensive coordinators be your offensive coordinator is going to make things that much harder. And I hadn't heard about that stat about Parker, but then you talk about adding in where you're not getting any separation in your receivers, you're throwing in tight windows, you're not playing with an entire offense of 5-star recruits like you did in college. It's a lot harder. So he's a guy that I'm going to be watching, I think the ceiling is lower for him. I think he, I just don't think he has enough. Honestly, I just don't see the potential there for him to compete long term with the other superstar quarterbacks in the AFC. But either way, both of us sounds like are going to be looking at the Patriots, particularly their passing offense this year.
Yeah, I mean, if no one can create separation on the outside, it's pretty much done, right? Something kind of entertaining is I've seen many Keyshawn Butte comps to Juju based on this last year's tape, right? Not a true separator, more of he's a bigger body slot,
good
yak,
run after catch.
Yep, exactly. He's a strong runner, which he still can do, but it's not like those guys are winning on the outside, right? So if Parker can't separate, you need Thornton in there, and if he can't, well, they might be calling for Zappy again, and which, by the way, is another very good name.
Yeah, also awesome. Yeah.
And I also just wanted to shout out, this guy might not even make the 53-man roster. I'm looking at their roster right now to glance. Oh, no, there he is. Ronnie Perkins, right? He hasn't even played a snap, I believe, in the last 2 seasons, but he was something in college as a pass rusher. And I think if he can actually be healthy and make the 53-man roster, just look for him to potentially be an impact designated pass rusher.
Who's across from Judon? Because they got Judon on as their main D end, right? Matthew Judon. Who's across
Josh
from him?
Uche, who actually had a very good season. His production for his snaps was very impressive. So, Judon, Uche, and then after that, it's really from an outside linebacker base, lining up 5 to 7 tech. They don't really have many other names. So if Perkins can be healthy, and that would be nice, but he might not even make the roster, honestly.
Well, you heard that, lady. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. If Perkins makes that roster, let's look for him to have a big season. All right, so let's move on to the Jets. Not a whole lot to say about my person. I'm watching Ron, baby. I want to see what Aaron Rodgers does. He seems to be reinvigorated. And he's one of those guys that he can make those he's one of the only other guys I feel like that I watch other than Mahomes that makes those throws that you just shake your head and it's like, well done. Nothing you can do, right? I remember when the Chiefs played Mahomes was actually hurt, but when the Chiefs and the Packers played a couple years ago, it was a tight game. I think and it was in Arrowhead, and Rodgers made a throw that looked like he was throwing it out of bounds, and he threw it in the back of the end zone and it just happened, just as the receiver caught it. I mean, an unbelievable off of his back foot, fading away. It was like, wow. The 85 Bears couldn't have stopped that. So, I don't know if he's lost a step or not. I think he's actually turning 40 during this season, or he might already be 40. But he's getting up there a little bit. Now, he still has, it looks like he still has a good arm. So I just want to see Aaron, man. I want to see what he does. And he seems to be reinvigorated. So I think he's going to put together a bounce back campaign this year.
And they brought his buddies in too. They brought Lazard and Cobb.
How is Cobb, man? How is that guy still getting jobs?
Well, because of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, exactly.
He loves him. When he's on the field, he gets flooded with targets.
Yep. He's gonna do like the Jason Witten approach, just run like 5 yards and turn around and catch it and fall over, and just do that a bunch.
Hey, if it works. So who I'm watching will have a major impact on how many, when someone does something wrong on Rodgers' offense and he makes it known because he stares at them and grimaces. I want that to be avoided with their right tackle this year, or projected right tackle at this time right now, assuming Mekhi Becton's health and he's not staying at left if he is healthy. Max Mitchell, he was small coming out, right? He's listed at 299 currently at 6'6", so he is slim. And he only played 340 snaps at right tackle in 2022, but he did well. But I'm worried if he gets a starting job, that he could just get bull rush all day back into Rodgers if people just realize that he doesn't have that anchor. So he played incredibly well. He was debatably the most dominant tackle in college football for his competition, right? He played middling college competition, but he has so much potential with his movement skills, with his technique. And if he has gained weight, then he could be really solid. But I see if Rodgers is getting hit left and right because of a liability on either side, the season's not going to go well for him because he's not a young man anymore. He's a little more confined to the pocket. So there needs to be a pocket for him to navigate. And Max Mitchell, he could either take a big step forward this year, or he could be a liability, or he could be right in the middle. Right, that's the range of outcomes for him. So just be sure to watch him this year and really see which step he takes.
Nice. All right. Well, I think it's time for us to pick division winners. So, and just so you folks know, Cam and I don't know what each other's picking. So we didn't plan this out ahead of time. So this will be the first time we both heard it. So I guess I'll start, and then you can tell me if you agree or if you hate it. When I was thinking about division winners for the AFC, I didn't want to. Of course, I'm not just going to pick the same division winners from last year, because of course there's a few there's a few teams that win each year, but there's always turnover. That's what makes the NFL great, and so there's always some surprising teams. And so I'm gonna jump on the Aaron bandwagon, and I'm picking the Jets. And I know it sounds crazy, and I think a couple things led me to that. I was pretty disgusted with the Bills' performance in the playoffs. I mean, they just got destroyed by the Bengals, and the Bengals are good. Don't get me wrong, Bengals are really good, but they just looked lethargic. They got destroyed at the line of scrimmage, and I didn't. And like we said, I mean, they're certainly they've been adding to the offense, and so their offense will be good. But I don't know. I'm not sure they're going to have the level of physicality that that I'd like to see from them. And so I think there's going to be some turnover. I think if Aaron Rodgers comes out and looks spry, and I think to your point, Cam, if he gets the type of protection that the Jets are hoping to give him time, he's got plenty of playmakers. They may even add Dalvin Cook here before too long. And so Breece Hall coming back from injury. So the offense, and obviously with Sauce and the young guys, Quinnen Williams, the defense, I think a lot of things could they need some breaks, and they got a really tough schedule, especially early. But someone's got to win it. So my pick's the Jets. What do you got?
I actually like the Jets. That's not my pick, but something I just wanted to bring up is they really have a strong defense. I mean, their defense is incredible. They have Jermaine Johnson as a first round pick last year, and they drafted Will McDonald again as an Iowa State this year.
Yep.
And neither of them are even projected to be the starters as it stands at least on their official depth chart right now. So they have that defensive line rotation with Quinnen Williams. It's going to be nasty with Sauce and DJ Reed taking the outsides. I think they're going to be one of the most locked down defenses in the league. But I don't know if they can lock down Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, because I have Miami.
Okay, let's go.
I think when Tua's played healthy, he's actually looked very comfortable in the offense this last year. I don't have him off the top of my head right now, but earlier in this season last year, I was going through some quarterback EPA, and he was just leading the charts. I mean, across the league in many different statistics that aren't measured by box scores. And I really think this offense can come together. And then the defense should also come to. I mean, their pass rush. Jalen Phillips was a beast last year, and he's across from Bradley Chubb, right? I just think they're going to tear it up, and they're going to get turnovers. They're going to get third and longs all the time. And I just don't know how you can stop Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And now you just add someone who might be even faster than either of them. I know that's a lot. Let's say AJ might not be as fast as Tyreek Hill, but he is.
Well, Tyreek thinks he's faster than Usain Bolt, so maybe in his own head.
That's true. And I mean, we haven't seen that race, so who am I to judge? But I think Miami can really take the division. So should we head on to the AFC North?
Yep. Yeah, no issues with that pick. Of course, y'all heard it. We don't like the Bills, and we don't like
Apparently
the Patriots. So let's move on. Cam, give us an overview as we start. I guess what do we have up first? The Ravens as we head into the AFC
let's
North.
Do it. So Ravens projected win total of 10.5. Their odds on division are plus 220. They have a moderate strength of schedule this year, 21st, and they got a new offensive coordinator. Is that's right? Right? Who was that? I'll look it up later. But you can go ahead and look that up. The guy I want to
Todd
I'll
Monk.
just Todd Monk. Okay, yes. So they are not going to be running as much as they have. They can't. It's impossible. So I think Lamar Jackson's really going to step it up throwing this year. I think he's going to have a good season. But that aside, I'm looking at David Ajabo right now. He is coming off of that Achilles, right? And he was a potential first round pick, honestly, before that Achilles injury, dropped him to the mid second. And it'll be interesting to see if that impacts his burst forever, right? Achilles injuries are no joke, but he is an ears pinned back designated pass rusher. He can get after it if he's healthy. And I would love to see him come back. I hate Achilles injuries, man. I had one, not too severe, but I felt it for, over a decade. And it's just, I love seeing players come back from those. So if Ajabo can come back and really be an impact pass rusher, I mean, that'll help this defense tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually picked a defensive player too. I picked Marlon Humphrey as a guy that I want to keep an eye on. I remember a few years ago, I think he was a first team All-Pro a few years ago. Is still a young guy, I believe out of Alabama, if I remember. And I think he was really approaching, one of the best young corners in the league. And then I think he dealt with some injuries. He missed some time a couple seasons ago. I think he had a full season last year, was technically a Pro Bowl. So kind of had a, Pro Bowl player, had a bounce back year. But I think that, I think that division's going to be, I think it's going to be a tough division, obviously with the Bengals and, and I mean, the Browns are kind of a wild card, but I think either way, I mean, with the Steelers on the rise, I think that the Ravens need to go back to some of that old school Ravens defense. And I think Marlon Humphrey's going to be a big key if he can build off of what he was, off of his season last year. If he can work back towards that All-Pro status from a few years ago, I think it could be a big boost for their defense.
Well, I mean, he needs to watch out for George Pickens, who is self-proclaimed best receiver, best athlete in the league. So
there you go. Best smack talker, maybe, right?
Yeah, maybe he's up there. Yeah, so that's interesting. We both picked defensive players because I do think, as I stated earlier, that their offense is going to be completely different this year. It's not going. I mean, if Bateman's healthy, if Dobbins is healthy, right? Those are big ifs. Dobbins is. I mean, it's looking bleak, but they are. Dobbins is an incredible runner, and if Lamar Jackson can actually have passing, receiving threats, they brought Bateman healthy. They bring in Odell Beckham, and they draft Zay Flowers in the first. I mean, they're trying to throw the kitchen sink at this offense to see what they can do. So I'm looking forward to watching them because I have no idea how this offense is going to run and how much different it's actually going to look. And I know it's a big discussion right now amongst the fantasy community, right? No one knows who to draft among the wide receivers. No one knows when to draft Lamar or any of the running backs. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Absolutely. All right. What do you got for the Bengals?
All right. Bengals, they're projected to win once again, 11.5 win total with a plus 150 odds on division. And why don't you take this one first, Alex? Who you looking at?
Yeah, I got Joey B. I know it's probably easy again, but as a fan, I mean, as a Chiefs fan, and I know if we got any other Chief or Bengal fans out here, but it's really turned into quite the rivalry the last few years. Not just because two elite teams going at it, but all the off the field smack talk, and I love it. It's great for the National Football League. I got my cousin Christian. Christian, if you're listening, he's a big Bengals fan, so we've had a lot of fun talking smack over the last couple years, and so I'm a little worried about Burrow's injury. I know it sounded like it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but seems like it might be a nagging thing. And there's a little bit of an injury history there with Burrow. So I think that if Burrow, especially if he doesn't start the year and it takes him a little while to come back, I know last year, I think he had his appendix pulled out and that kind of slowed, I think, the start early. They were kind of slow. I mean, they certainly put it all together later in the year, but it's tough. It's tough to win in the National Football League. And, if you kind of get in this habit of not having some of your star quarterback available early, you start off with a couple L's. It gets really hard to dig out of that. So I'll have all eyes on Mr. Joe Burrow this year to see how he's feeling. and how long it takes to get that offense in sync.
And if he isn't healthy to start the season, we have the Broncos, Jets, Saints, Bears legend Trevor Siemian backing him up now. So
I didn't even know he was on all those teams. I remember him on the Broncos, but I didn't even remember him on the other ones.
I didn't either until I looked it up right now. So it's interesting. You bring up Joe Burrow. Obviously, their passing game is going to be incredible with Chase Higgins and Boyd. But something they've been trying a few different things at tight end the last few years. And now they bring in Irv Smith Jr. on a nothing contract, right? It's 1 year, 1.75 mil. And behind him, Drew Sample, Will Cox, Asi. I don't know what that rotation is going to look like. I'm sure they're hoping Irv Smith can come in and be the receiving threat that he was drafted to be and couldn't really develop to become on the Vikings. But either way, Joe Burrow is going to be fine with those primary three. It'll just be interesting to watch the tight end rotation throughout the year, see who steps up. And the guy I wanted to bring up is on the defensive side. That's Dax Hill, right? He was excellent in college. He was a first-round pick. But last year, he only played 10 or more snaps in 2 games. He started full-time just in week 15, where he allowed 4 receptions on 5 targets and missed a tackle. So he hasn't had the best showing so far. But I think he's sliding into the starting role at free safety. He can play strong, he can play free, but I'm looking forward to seeing how he progresses because again, I did like him a lot coming out of college. So we'll see how he can step into the starting role and perform.
Absolutely. All right, good call out there. I guess next we got the Browns. I mean, mine's pretty easy there. I didn't want to pick all quarterbacks, but I'm going to watch Deshaun Watson. I think last year, like a lot of people, he didn't look good. He looked rusty. His decision making looked questionable. He just looked slow out there. Not like unathletic, but maybe slow to process. And I don't know. I mean, I remember he certainly was, had moments where he really looked elite back when he was with the Texans and I think carried that team, which I don't think those teams were particularly talented and they were always competitive because of Watson. So we'll see, we'll just see. This will be a big year to see if he's still the same player he used to be, if he can kind of rise above some of those off the field challenges. And I'm really curious to see what Deshaun Watson looks like this year.
Yeah, and right now he's plagued by on-the-field challenges, right? I mean, I saw a thread that showed all of his deepest passes in descending order from this 2022 season. And I think the first 8 or more were incompletions. He had a negative EPA on deep passes, which is very rare. I mean, he did not pass the eye test, and his stats back that up. So we'll see how he performs this year. They traded for Elijah Moore. They drafted Cedric Tillman. They have some talent in that wide receiver room with Amari Cooper. So we'll see how he can perform. And honestly, last year the issue was not the receiving core. So even though it's improved, it's all on Watson's shoulders. So for the Browns, something else I'm looking forward to seeing is their entire defensive line rotation, except for obviously Myles Garrett, because they brought in a lot of new bodies. They drafted Isaiah McGuire in the 4th round. On the end, they brought in Okoronkwo. They brought in Zadarius Smith, and then even Alex Wright he's a sophomore with the team. So there's all these guys looking to rotate across from Garrett. And then on the interior, which was debatably their biggest weakness, aside from maybe quarterback last year, and they brought in Dalvin Tomlinson from Minnesota. They drafted Siaki Ika in the 3rd round. And so if they can get an effective rotational pass rush across from Garrett and use those big boys they brought in with Ika and Tomlinson in the middle, who, Ika isn't even projected to start right now based on their roster. And I keep talking about projected to start. These early depth charts, preseason depth charts, really don't mean much. It's just who happens to be there, on the roster at the time, who's progressing through camp isn't really shown, displayed too quickly on those charts. But still, they need that interior to be solid. And if they have a good rotation, then Myles Garrett won't get quite as many double teams, at least, hopefully. because he had one of the highest rates in the league last year, and he's probably the best defensive end in the league, in my opinion, based on everything he's been able to do, keep his pressure rate high through double teams and just how he looks. He's a monster. So I'm looking forward to seeing that defensive line rotation just across the board. See if they can change it up from last year.
Nice. All right, who you got for? I guess we'll move on here. What do you got for an overview for us for the Steelers?
All right, Steelers 8.5, 8.5 Vegas win total. They are last in the division, but their odds on the division are only plus 470. So it's a tight race. To be last in plus 470 is unique. So they're 8.5 win total is decent, but it's not great. It's right there in the middle. But their strength of schedule, it's 8th, so not the hardest schedule ahead. And all eyes are obviously on Kenny Pickett. He, according to the Steelers fans I talked to, he looked excellent last year, apparently. But in all seriousness, he looked better as the year progressed. People that the Steelers fans I know who are all, every Steelers fan is a diehard Steelers fan. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's true.
But Kenny Pickett is we'll see what he can do with a future Hall of Famer George Pickens and Deontay Johnson helping him out. I've heard some things about camp, seen some clips on Calvin Austin. Apparently he's not stepping into that slot role as well as they would have pleased, but he is, he doesn't really have that NFL body, so it's hard to project him moving forward. But all that said, I'm talking a lot about Pickett and their passing offense, but that's all reliant on how well the offensive line can perform, right? So what I'm looking at this year is the left side of the offensive line. Isaac Samalu is brought in from the Eagles, and Broderick Jones, first round rookie. Now, Samalu is a good player, but he also played next, on a superstar offensive line, and playing next to Jason Kelsey will make your life a lot easier. So him, playing next to Mason Cole, you're right, between Cole and Broderick Jones, we'll actually really see what kind of player he can be, and if he can really elevate this offense by helping out in both the run and pass game. And Broderick Jones is, I liked him a lot as a prospect, very athletic, but he is raw, and he's prone to making mistakes. And something that concerns me is they start the year week 1 against Nick Bosa, week 2 Myles Garrett, and week 3 Max Crosby. So you can't get much harder than that as an opening schedule, and those guys are going to be lining up against the rookie who came out after, I believe, his redshirt sophomore season. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong about that later. But it's if he can outperform Dan last year, if Samalu can step up and this offensive line holds up, then I think their offense can be better than a lot of people are projecting. And their defense is going to be solid. So this team could surprise this year. It really could. I don't think they're going to finish 4th in the division. I don't think they'll finish first, but I don't think they'll finish last either.
Okay. Yeah, nice. I would say I have Najee Harris. I think that's a player I want to watch. I do love running backs. I love physical running backs. I remember watching him in college at Alabama, and been impressive what he's done so far. And so I'm just excited to see him. I know that that's usually a spot that the Steelers always seem like they churn out great wide receivers and great running backs. And so I'm excited to see him this season.
Yeah, and Najee, the last couple seasons, he's only had, after being a first round pick, he had 3.9 yards a carry in 21 and 3.8 in 22. He's just been a thumper, but so much of running back success comes off the line. So, I mean, if the line can step it up, then Najee, I mean, he's a big dude. He gains some momentum through a hole. He can really knock some, punish linebackers even. So yeah, we'll see. This could be a good offense, but it's reliant on the line and Kenny Pickett taking a big step forward.
Great insight, Cam. And I guess you can go first this time. Who do you got for your division winner here?
I'm gonna be boring. I got the Bengals. They won last year. I think they're gonna win again this year. It's just Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T Higgins, right? How can you root against them? It's like betting. I bet against Patrick Mahomes last year in my preseason rankings, and it didn't work out. So I'm not going to bet against Joe Burrow.
Well, you're not
Jamar
alone
Chase.
in that. Not alone in that. So I thought again, I wanted to switch it up a little bit. I mean, I can't argue with that. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take a flyer, and I picked the Ravens. I do think the Bengals are a better team, but I just thought, when I was going through and thinking about this, I have some concerns about Burrow and his health, especially with some of that, the history there. Like I said earlier, they've had a bit of a slow start last couple seasons. And so, I think that, and I think Lamar, got that big contract. He certainly wants to go out and show that he's worth that, and show that he can be a passing, that he can be effective from the pocket as well as running. So I don't think. I just wanted to change it up, so I got the Ravens. I don't feel strong about it, but I just thought I needed to pick somebody other than the Bengals.
I like it. I mean, if I weren't going to pick the Bengals, I'd pick the Ravens. Right? They're pretty clear.
So that means if you got the Ravens second, so it sounds like you probably have the Steelers third. So you think the Browns will bring up the rear here for the AFC North?
I don't know, man. Watson did not look good last year, and I like the Browns team. I've liked their roster on paper for this will be, I believe, the third season. They keep letting me down just a little bit. So, I think as it stands right now, I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers were second in this division behind the Bengals. Really, I do just like their overall roster so much. But
it might be. I mean, they might beat up on each other so much that maybe 10, 11 wins does it. I mean, if they split between each other, it could be really tight for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I read the Browns projected win total. It's 9.5, so that puts Steelers at 8-5, Browns at 9-5, Ravens at 10-5, and Bengals at 11-5.
So even those are only a game apart. Yeah,
one game apart across the division. So all right, well. Let's hammer out the AFC South and AFC West now. So we can start with the Texans in the AFC South. And Alex, you want to take this one?
I'll be quick. I don't want to watch the Texans. I put nobody. So I guess if I had to pick somebody, I would like to see CJ Stroud. I'd like to see how he translates coming from Ohio State. And what that looks like, on the Texans. But I still think, I mean, even with some young talent coming in, I got to think the Texans are at least a couple years away from really competitive, being really competitive, even within the AFC South. So I put nobody. I don't want to watch the Texans. Who do you got, Cam?
This one's easy for me. It's John Mechie, because he was a second round pick and then he got leukemia and couldn't play last year. So I like. I like the player. I didn't love him as much as some people coming out, but I would love to see him come back and just dominate after such a rough time for him. So coming back from leukemia, he seems all cleared from what I've seen, ready to go. So if he can slide in and be that a reliable slot option for Stroud, it'll make Stroud's life easier as well. So hoping he can.
And what did you have for the overview? What's the win total at for them?
Good call. So it's at 6.5. Which, sure.
I might take the under on that. I don't. Oh, man, I think they're still years away. I don't know. And the AFC being so tough, I might take the under on that if I was a betting man.
Yeah. So I pulled these odds this morning, right? So this is kind of interesting. Texans are at 6.5, odds on division plus 1,000, but the Colts are also at 6.5, where the odds on division are plus 550. So kind of odd there, but. Yeah, they are by no means winning this division. 6.5 wins does seem a little generous. So, moving on then. Let's go to the Colts. So, as I said, they're 6.5 plus 550 to win the division, and they have the third easiest schedule in the NFL. So, a little bit of grace for them there. But the Colts, they're interesting because they just drafted Richardson, and apparently, according to Kwity Paye, it's demoralizing going against him in training camp. So good, he might just be hyping up his teammate, but the things are looking good for the superstar athlete this early. And the guy I wanted to bring up is Deo Odiingbo, because he's 2 years removed from an Achilles injury, much like Ojabo, and he was the second round pick. And this guy he was a terror in college. He is 286 with 35.5-inch arms, and he's a violent, explosive edge rusher. I mean, his highlight clip is beautiful. If you wanna watch some fun stuff later for college. I mean, he's diving around, he's pushing guys back, he's throwing them to the ground. So I would love to see him return from an Achilles injury as well. And he was drafted in the same year as Pay. So if this young team can get some young guys to really step up and come back, then they're going to be much better off, right? They drafted Adetomiwa Adebaware in this year's draft in the 4th round, who's an explosive dude. Kwity Paye and Odiingbo are on rookie contracts. Half their offense is on rookie contracts. So, if he can come back, it'll be a real big help for this team.
Nice. Yeah, I know you mentioned some of those takes on Richardson. That's who I have. I think he's going to play this year. I'm for sure. Maybe week 1, maybe week 3, who knows? But he's going to play. And I think it was actually Michael Pittman earlier today or yesterday said that if he was playing Madden and he created a quarterback in Madden, he said it would be Anthony Richardson. He said 99 for his strength and 99 for his arm, and was kind of listing off all these physical attributes for Richardson, which obviously, like you said, could be just his teammate building him up. He's a receiver, so maybe he's like, hey, I'll build him up so he'll throw me the ball, right? It could be some of that, but yeah, he looks like out of Florida. I mean, just such a stud athlete. But I think that the Colts got some holes, a lot of holes, like the Texans, and so it'll be curious to see, if they try to redshirt him a little bit. I think Gardner Minshew, I believe, is the other quarterback that's fighting for that first spot. So another kind of a journeyman and could come in and win a few games for you for sure. But sooner or later, Richardson's going to be in there. So I'm excited to see what he does when he gets in there.
Yeah, and something people always like to bring up an anti-Richardson take is you look at his rushing profile, right? His production profile for running the ball in college, and it's not up there with a lot of the other major, running quarterbacks coming out. But if you watch how he plays the game, he is keeping his eyes downfield. He wants to pass the ball. He's just also a physical freak who can make things happen when he can't throw the ball downfield. So now, when he throws the ball, it might not always look the best, but he's not one of those one read and take off kind of guys. Like a lot of people are trying to say he's like Malik Willis. He's nothing like Malik Willis. Willis was a true one read and tuck the ball and try to find a gap kind of guy. I think Richardson could really become a good passer because a lot of what makes him unreliable is fixable, right? Short distance accuracy. For instance, that's something people, he can't throw the ball 5 yards. Well, he can learn that, right? You can't learn to throw the ball 80 yards. Well,
maybe this is like a maybe too high of a comp, but I almost wonder if he's going to have a route similar to Josh Allen. Josh Allen's such a physical runner, can certainly be a punishing runner as a quarterback. Accuracy, he's gotten better, right? He wasn't a super accurate passer out of college. He's gotten better each year. I mean, obviously he's a superstar quarterback now, but do you see a similar potential, out of Richardson?
I think that's certainly possible. None of this, you heard it here first. Richardson's the next Josh Allen, bogus, but he does have a lot of the same qualities. He is a workout warrior. He is dedicated. He seems to be a good dude. And people like the Josh Allen comp because he's raw, because of the size comparison. Allen is 6'5", 238. Richardson has 6 pounds on him at an inch shorter. So you think it's hard to tackle Josh Allen. I mean, this dude can bulldoze you. You think of running backs. He's 6'1", 230. That's a big running back. This guy's 6'4", 244. He can run through linebackers. So he's definitely going to be a dual threat. And I think if he can really work on passing the ball more, just work on his accuracy. And he's with Shane Steichen now too, right?
Yep.
So if anyone can bring it out, we'll see. It's going to be an exciting season.
Get ready for the tush push. The tush push coming to Indianapolis.
Yeah, lots of big plays and lots of heartbreak for the Colts this year, I'm sure.
Yes. All right, so we can keep moving. Next, we got up the Jags. I'll give my player, and then you can give us an overview. Mine's pretty easy. I want to see Calvin Ridley. Especially after taking that year off. Not planning on it, right? But taking that year off, getting traded, new offense. I think I want to see what he does. What do you got? What do you got for the outlook for the Jags, and what players you keep an eye on?
Well, Ridley says he's a 1,400-yard receiver this year, so we'll see how it goes. But Jags, they're projected to win the division again, 9.5 wins, and their Vegas, their odds on division are minus 155. So they are far and away the favorites to win. And my guy what I want to see with Jacksonville are both of their starting tackles or offensive tackles, as long as Cam Robinson's suspended, right? So Walker Little is interesting because coming out of college or going into college, he was one of the highest recruits of all time. 247 has him at 103. I've only please anyone listening, let me know if there's someone higher besides Jadeveon Clowney, who I've seen at 105. But over at least the last 15 years, I haven't seen anyone ranked higher. So he's one of the highest rated recruits of all time. And then he got injured in, I believe, 2019 and just didn't play for 2 years before getting drafted. So he's assuming that starting role at right tackle. And if he can develop as a prospect, I mean, the physical gifts he has and how he looked, I know it's so long ago, but coming out of high school, he was just that good to where if he can turn it on, and develop, he will be good. So looking forward to seeing how he plays. And then Anton Harrison will most likely start at left tackle during this suspension, right? They drafted him early enough to where he should be expected to slide into his starting role. And he is physically weaker as a prospect, so we'll see how he holds up against some of the power rushers in his rookie season. But these tackles could really help or really hurt Trevor Lawrence, depending on how they perform. All right. Well, moving on to the last team in the division, the Tennessee Titans. They are projected to be second in the division at 7.5 wins. Odds on division are plus 310. So, Alex, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, and I was just looking at my my list of players, and I just for the record, I didn't go to Alabama, but somehow I realized I picked a bunch of Alabama guys. I know I talked about Marlon Humphrey earlier, Najee Harris. I just talked about Ridley, and now I'm going to bring up Derrick Henry. So I want to see Derrick Henry. Like we said earlier, I'm a sucker for Derrick Henry stiff arm. I think I love to see that as a fan. Not when it's against my Chiefs, like it was a couple years ago when the Titans destroyed the Chiefs. I think that was last year, early in the season, or maybe 2 years ago. But anyway, I want to see Derrick Henry. I know he's, just such a freak athlete, a guy that's that big, that can move like that. And he's obviously the engine behind that offense that has been suspect in the passing game, I think, the past couple of years. So, I want to see Derrick Henry stiff arm some people, and I'm happy. What about you, Cam? Who do you got?
Well, true sleeper, Derrick Henry. You heard it here first.
Yes.
So I'm looking at Tyjae Spears behind him. Not the guy I chose, for this segment, but I have Tyjae Spears everywhere in fantasy, and he looked so good in college. If his knee can hold up, I think he can really be a good successor to Henry and even help him out on, in third down situations and help his workload this year. But the guy I chose is Andre Dillard, right? Because they brought him in to be their left tackle, and he's never started a full season at tackle. He was a first-round pick, 4 years ago, but he's not on a very friendly contract with multiple void years to start at left tackle, and he took last year he took only 4 snaps at tackle the entire season. Only took 337 in 2021, and he didn't even play in 2020. So paying some guy on a not very team-friendly contract to come in, start left tackle, who's never done it before, for potentially, a rookie. They drafted Will Levis. We'll see if he plays this year. No insight as to when he's going to be starting, but it could pay off or it could go terribly wrong. So it was kind of a peculiar move to me, but we'll see how Dillard can play. All right,
Nice.
Alex, who you got for the division?
This one's not as exciting. I had to go with Vegas on this one. I have the Jags. I just don't trust. Like I said, I not that I'm trying to pick on the Texans and the Colts, but I think both of those rosters are years away, which just really leaves us as Tennessee as the other competition for the Jags. And I'm not sold on, like you just mentioned, I'm not sold on Tannehill and the passing offense. I like Vrabel as a coach, but I mean, if their entire approach is just Derrick Henry to put the team on his back, that's gonna be a tough hill to climb, even for a guy as big and strong as that. So I got the Jags. What do you bet you?
I got the Jags too, man. No other reason besides what you said, right? They're just simply the best team in this division, and they should take it home again this year.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on. We got the AFC West. You want to kick us off with the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, let's do it. So Broncos, 8.5 projected wins this year at plus 600 to win the division, and it's hard not to choose someone in a passing offense for this team, right? Because Russell Wilson, after having such a Hall of Fame career, he
except last year,
right? He after having such a that trajectory, he looked abysmal, and Tim Patrick just went down in camp, and I'm looking to Cortland Sutton because it seemed like Sutton is in the doghouse, but he's going to have to step up as a number 2 behind Judy, as he was, at least supposed to before. But he hasn't really performed since, what was it, 2019 is when he had his big season, and there's not a lot of options in this passing offense. So Russell Wilson's going to have a good year. Sutton's going to need to step up. Judy's going to need to step up. And so overall, I'm just looking at the whole passing offense.
Nice call, Cam. So as a Chiefs fan, I want to see Frank Clark. He's also, I thought it was interesting. The Chiefs have beat the Broncos. I think it's 15 in a row now, and so it's been domination. And I think I want to say the record it's like 19 or something of consecutive wins of one team against another, and I believe it was the Steelers over like the Bills or the Dolphins. I could be wrong there, but it's something from the 70s. So no team. I mean, the Patriots came close, but they, in one of their runs, I think in the early 2000s against the Jets. But the Chiefs, I mean, especially if they sweep the Broncos again, they're going to be closing in on that NFL record real quick. And Frank Clark was a guy in Kansas City that never really strung together the regular season production that really I think Chief fans really wanted to see, especially with how much he was costing. Even in the 2019 Super Bowl year, I think he was the highest paid, or at least had the highest cap hit on the whole team. So I mean, certainly a guy that was paid a lot of money. Did have a lot of production in the playoffs, and I think obviously Chief fans are thankful for that. But curious to see what he does in Denver. I don't think Denver's a playoff team. So if the only version they get of Frank Clark is regular season Frank Clark, then I think they'll be disappointed. But we'll see what happens. So I'm going to be watching Frank Clark this year.
All right. Well, I'll also be looking at the defense. I just wanted to give a shout out to Nick Bonito. Earlier in this hour, you said that you heard it here first. Ronnie Perkins, next big thing. That's more of a pipe dream. Nick Bonito is actually a very good pass rusher. The Broncos last year were 9th in the league in pass rush win rate overall on the season, and Gregory and Browning did a lot of that work. But Bonito, college production profile in his pass rush win rate were just out of this world. They were pretty much unheard of. So he's a smaller guy, speed rusher only. But if he can come in and really, take more snaps this year as that on that third, those third and longs as a designated pass rusher, he should have a significant impact. So I'm looking forward to seeing if he's put on any weight this year and how he can translate his game to the NFL. So nice. Let's move on to the Chiefs, and I'm gonna let you definitely take this one. I will say they are favorites to win the division, 11.5. I believe that's tied for the highest across the NFL, and they're minus 180 to win the division. So take us away, Alex.
Thanks, Cam. I'll make it quick, only because I'll spare you maybe a whole nother hour that we could go, or at least I could go on the Chiefs. But I think a couple guys. I mean, I would say as a unit, I think similar to what a lot of people are talking about. I'm interested to see the wide receiver room. I know that some guys that have been getting a lot of buzz in camp. I mean, Richie James is a guy that sort of stepped in and done a lot of stuff that I think they were maybe planning for Kadarius Toney with his injury. Rashee Rice looks great. He's been looking really athletic on the perimeter, making looks like he has a great shot. I think everyone's excited to see Sky Moore and to see what he kind of continues to develop into in year 2. I think MVS is what he is. I don't know how much evolution we'll kind of get out of him, but he has a role. Has a role to play. And then Justin Ross is a guy that, if folks recall, back when he was a freshman at Clemson, was one of the best receivers in the nation as a college receiver. And so he's a guy that has gotten a lot of buzz, has had some serious health problems over the last few years. I think he had multiple back injuries that has kind of delayed his entrance in. I mean, he was on the Chiefs last year. He was either on the PUP or maybe the practice squad, but it was kind of a redshirt year for him last year, I think, to get healthy. But so far, you can't judge too much because we're only a couple weeks into training camp. We haven't even seen him in a preseason game yet. But if he is fully healthy and can kind of sustain the hits, then I think he has a shot to make the roster and maybe even a shot to contribute. So I'll be keeping a close eye, I think, on the receiver room through the preseason, and looking forward to that. And then the only thing is you got to get Chris Jones back. Of course, he's still on a holdout. Had an amazing All-Pro year last year. I don't think the Chiefs win the Super Bowl without the performance in the regular season and in the postseason from Chris Jones. And I think he wants to get paid, and rightfully so. So hopefully the Chiefs can kind of get that figured out. He is under contract for this year, so even if they can't reach something, he should be on the field producing for the Chiefs this season. But if you don't get that contract done before the final year, it's pretty unlikely that it will happen next year because he'll be an unrestricted free agent and he'll be able to go out, see the market, and see what he can do. Franchise tag is always an option as well, but it seems like it's rare that the franchise tag translates into some sort of long-term deal. So that's my quick overview. But of course, I'll save some of my other Chief takes for some of our other podcasts later on. What do you got, Cam? Who are you looking at for on the Chiefs?
Well, I just want to chime in on Justin Ross real quick, because if I recall this correctly, there were, when he was coming in, 28 of the 32 teams did not clear him medically, and there were 4 who did. And so he started playing, but I'm looking at his injury history right now, and he had the neck injury, he had congenital effusion in his spine, and according to the 33rd team, the surgery involved the complete removal of a disc in his neck. So it's scary watching him out there, but I hope he can be healthy and come through for you guys. Now, you said you could spend an hour on the Chiefs. I got a little off the rails when scouting this year, and I could go for an hour on Felix Anudike-Uzomah. He's my favorite player.
Felix.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite player in the draft because I had such a different opinion from consensus. He was 17th on my big board. Third, I had him as a 3rd ranked edge in the class, and the reason is because at Kansas State, they play a 3-3-5. He was lining up. He took, I believe, 72 snaps at defensive tackle, right? He was lining up at 4-eye often. He was over the tackle, 3-point stance at 255 pounds. So it was not conducive for success. He was getting double teamed every other play. But when he lined up one-on-one, when he lined up on the outside and the guard did not help, he just won the rep. He is clever. He uses length incredibly well. He has ridiculous bend, and his balance might not be the best. But when I'm watching defensive ends, I look at their one-on-one reps and just watch that tape and see how they play and how often they win. He never seems to get locked up ever. He always has a move. And even in his press conference at the combine, he talked about it. He was saying, I'll start off, I'll hit him with the long arm, see how they react, how their balance, if I should be using power or speed. So I like his brain. I like his play style, and he has kind of a lanky frame. He has really long legs, really long arms, and I think he can put on at least 10 more pounds at the NFL level. So he's 21 years old right now.
Mhm.
And I wrote that if he can play in a 4-3 as a 4-3 base end, then he's just going to wreak havoc at the NFL level. And he could really become one of the NFL's better starting ends, because he's not just a good pass rusher. He's a great run defender. And, I'm just really glad that he went to a team that runs, that could play him out at 5 tech 7 wide 9, can move him around sort of the edge, as opposed to playing him, you know, sort of, dropping him back into coverage as an outside linebacker in typical 3-4s, whatnot. So, also just another note, his 2-point coming out of his point stance, he's very inefficient. So playing as that base end is and moving outside a bit is should be good for success. So I'm going to be watching him all season because I like being right, and seeing if me putting him ahead of Lucas Van Ness, ahead of Nolan Smith and whatnot, will actually pay off, and see if I need to adjust anything in next year's class.
Nice. Yeah, I hope he has a big season as well.
Oh, and shout out to Karlaftis, because I liked him coming out as well. I always like the Chiefs drafts, and I think they could be a really good duo. They're underrated as a tandem.
Yeah, the Chiefs defense is young. I didn't even spend any time talking about them, but I mean, they just won the Super Bowl with, I think, four really young rookie defensive backs. And so, adding some young guys, some athleticism, they really could have a really good defense this year. So that's exciting. I guess moving on to the Raiders, I guess we have to talk about them. If it was up to me, I'd skip them, but just kidding. I want to watch Max Crosby. He's just fun. I did watch the quarterback documentary on Netflix, and they kind of played some of the smack talk between him and Mahomes, and man, that was fun. That was just fun seeing him and Mahomes getting in each other's faces. And I love it. It's good for the game. I love the smack talk. I love the drama. So Max Crosby, he's fun to watch. So I'll be watching him.
Well, I will be honest. When you said you didn't want to, you wanted to skip over this team, I had trouble deciding who to choose in this one, and ultimately came down to two areas. First is offensive line, and that's Dylan Parham, because he was a pretty poor pass protector last year, and he played over 1,000 snaps along the interior. He played left guard, center, and right guard. So I just want to monitor his development in his second season, because if he can step up, this line needs a little bit of work. So that would be huge for them if he can help out Jimmy G. The other more interesting area I wanted to bring up is that, aside from Devontae Adams, now they just have slot receivers. They have Jacoby Myers, they have Hunter Renfrow, and it seemed like this team's approach was, we need good football players, right? And we'll figure out the scheme later, because Jacoby Myers last year played 82.5% of his snaps in the slot. Renfrow last year played 89.3. I mean, they're both pure slot receivers, and they don't really have any other promising outside receivers, who, at least none who have proven anything in the NFL yet. So to see how they line up, how they're utilized, if they can be clever about it, this could actually be a pretty electric offense, or at least reliable on third
I don't
down.
know if Jimmy G is electric, but
right,
but I hear you.
That's true. But Josh Jacobs is.
Yes, he
and
is.
Devontae Adams is. So yes. I have them finishing last by a long shot in this division this year, but they're definitely some things to look out for.
Awesome. And it's on to our last team in the AFC for us to talk about today. What do you got for us on the Los Angeles Chargers?
All right, the Chargers, 9.5 projected win total. That's second in the division behind the Chiefs at only plus 300 to win the division. So not a bad bet if you think something could happen to the Chiefs. But they brought in JC or did I write that down wrong? That's JC Jackson, right? Last year.
Yep. Last year. Yep.
Okay. All right. I wrote CJ Jackson. Brought in JC Jackson, and he was tremendously awful in this last season. After
they gave him a big contract, I believe.
Exactly. In 2022, he was number 20 on the NFL's top 100 players. And he was debatably the single worst starting cornerback in 2023. And I mean that literally. He had a lower PFF grade than any qualifying PFF cornerbacks with their snap totals, right? So he played horribly. And a big reason is that he was a man corner in New England. In the coaching staff with the Chargers, there were some quotes where they understand that because they played him in zone quite a bit, and they said, Jackson's the kind of guy who likes to get up and get in their face and press at the line, and we understand that. So at least they know. They're smart. These guys have their jobs for a reason, and hopefully he can turn that around this year. But get a big contract, play very objectively poorly. It's not a good look. So we'll see if he can bring it back and how he recovers from the injury.
Yeah, good call. Good analysis, Cam. I think for my player, one from a fan perspective, I just want to see Justin Herbert. Got that big contract. He's a stud. I think, I remember last year, I think he injured a rib. I don't think he broke it, but he had or maybe he even did break a rib in that game. I think it was in week 2 against the Chiefs. And just seeing him gut it out and battle through that. I mean, he could barely move, and he was still throwing dimes. So I mean, that was just I love that. I love the gladiator aspect of football. Nothing but mad props for him. And I think he's, even though the Chiefs have, I think their record against, I want to say it's it wouldn't be 5-3. I think it's maybe 3-2 or something against Herbert. It's 4-2. That's what it is. 4-2 against Herbert. So they have, won 4 of those matchups, but all the matchups have been close. I think maybe even all 6 of them have been within a score. So Herbert's played the Chiefs tough. Excited to see him, and he's a fun guy to watch. So definitely excited to see him this year.
Yeah, he was a man in that game. I mean, he was putting the team on his back the best he could. All right, man. I think I know who you have, but let's hear it. Who wins the division?
Yep. So, I got the Chiefs again. That was an easy pick. I mean, they've won the division 7 years in a row, which is amazing. And I mean, that even goes back before Mahomes took over. A couple other crazy stats. I mean, Mahomes has never lost a road division game. Now that's insane after 4 years. Now, I mean, that's going to change eventually. I mean, you'd think, but I mean, in his 4 years as being the starter, I mean, they have just dominated the division. I think he's lost a total of 3 division games. I think twice to the Chargers and once to the Raiders, and that's it in 4 years. And so, I mean, the Chiefs have just dominated it, and I just don't see that slowing down. I do think that there's a lot of talent, particularly on the Chargers. But I think the Chiefs will take it again.
It's the Chiefs, man. That's who I have too. I mean, we'll see if something happens, but right now, onwards, upwards.
Absolutely. So there you go, everybody. That was an overview. I mean, my closing thoughts, I guess, are just that this was a lot of fun. It's really fun to kick off this podcast. I think one of the things that I really enjoy about doing this with you, Cam, is I love, the in-depth analysis that you have to share. And I know there's even more stuff. I know we have a link posted for your website that has some really great stuff there as well. But I'm just really looking forward to this season. It's a lot of fun to do this with you. And for those of you that joined us, thank you so much. And I'm going to hand it off to Cam to close us out.
All right, man. Yeah, this has been so much fun. I love just getting together and talking football, right? So we're going to be doing the NFC next week. Really looking forward to getting to my Washington Commanders when we get there. And for everyone who joined us today, thanks for watching our very first podcast. So if you like what we had to say, make sure you click like, smash that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, everybody. See you later.
Peace.